Hi, my name is Rebecca Hill. I'm 37 years old, and I've never been in a relationship, and I haven't been on a date in over 10 years. About a month ago, I came across a video on YouTube by someone called Mom on the Spectrum. Um, I'm going to say a lot of ums, just FYI, because I'm nervous. But 16 overlooked traits in autistic females, and it was something the whole list I really related to. But the first item on the list was something I particularly related to. It says having a difficulty forming romantic relationships. And it really spoke to me because it's true for me. Almost all the things on that list were true, but that one especially. I was diagnosed 7 years ago. So, back when I was still dating and trying to form romantic relationships, I didn't have an autism diagnosis. And now looking back on my behaviors and things that I did, I feel a certain amount of shame associated with those times. And I know I shouldn't because, as they say, you do the best you can with the information that you have. And at the time, I didn't have this information that I was autistic. And so I was making all these kind of social blunders. But now that I know it, I know I shouldn't feel guilty, but I do. For people that I potentially hurt, or and also just secondhand embarrassment. Like, I can't believe I acted that way, and part of that is self hatred linked to my depression and anxiety. And so I'm going to therapy, and trying to address those things and trying to have a more positive self image. But it's really hard when you live in a society that is more geared towards people who aren't neurodivergent to kind of fit in. And that's just been my history my entire life. Some specific things that I feel a lot of shame for are it's really hard for me to talk about because a lot of times for me, I don't know whether this is a symptom of masking or the way I was raised or just trauma responses, but when I don't like talking about my emotions and the way I'm feeling and like showing my scars and the wounds that I have and the trauma I have, I try to fight past that and I try to share, but it's not something that is comfortable for me. I'm like that stereotypical wild animal, who hides when they're hurt or injured so people don't know. To kind of lick my wounds by himself. And that's not something that I want to do. And it's something I'm fighting against, but I do it. It's like my first response. Anyway, I'm rambling. But autistic people, they tend to, well, I first should say that this is just my experience. Since autism is a spectrum, things that I'm describing are personal to me. If they aren't personal to you, that's fine. Um, everybody's different, so don't take what I say as gospel. But I tend to get obsessive about things, and sometimes this is a good thing. I love to learn about new things, and so if I'm interested in something, like say a subject matter, I'll do a bunch of research or if I'm making something, I can hyper focus and you know devote a lot of time on making something I like to do. But when it comes to people, I tend to latch on to people, and I tend to get obsessive about them and about that relationship. And I know I did a lot of that in my early 20s, mid 20s. I kind of stopped doing that probably around my 30s because I was just like, I'm done. I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. But now as I contemplate, getting into new friendships, not even necessarily romantic relation, platonic relation, I'm afraid of being that way. And so I keep my distance from people so I don't get obsessive and I don't base my entire self worth on what that person thinks of me. And I don't want to get depressed about it and anxious about it because that's what I tend to do. Um, and I just can't think about anything else besides this person. And I know that behavior isn't normal and I don't want to do it. But a lot of times with negative behavior like that, even though I'm aware of it, I don't know what to replace it with. And that's frustrating for me. There's not a lot of autism resources in my area. I am in therapy, but the person I'm in therapy with doesn't specialize specifically in autism or even in behavioral changes, I don't think. Um, and working with her has been helpful with other things, but as far as my autism goes, I feel like I'm flailing around like a chicken with her head cut off, trying to fix things, but I just don't know how to fix them. And this affects how I form relationships and attachment. And another thing that autistic trait that I have that gets in the way of me forming relationships with people. I have my core group of friends, that I still talk to, and they understand me, you know. Um, they've known me long enough and they know kind of my quirks. But when meeting new people, they don't have a frame of reference, about why I do things. So I'm afraid to go out and meet new people and form attachments, both platonic and romantic, because I have a hard time talking to people, I guess. I mean, as a female, I've engaged in a lot of masking behaviors. So when I first meet people, I'm just trying to be normal, trying to be normal, trying to be normal. And that works sometimes, but then after a while, I start reverting back to my old habits, and all of a sudden, people are like, "You're like a completely just a different person. This isn't who I thought I was making friends with." And then they're just like, "Psst, peace out." Thankfully, I have my friends who have stuck around with me, and who are like, "Oh yeah, whatever," and they like me for me, which is important. But when meeting new people, I I tend to overtalk and I tend to overshare, and so people get uncomfortable, and so I feel like, or one of my main coping mechanisms, I think, when I'm meeting new people and trying to appear normal is by being funny and by being humorous. And so then people all think I'm light minded or that I just don't take things seriously or that I'm just kind of a flighty person, which is not the case. I feel things very deeply and I'm a very emotional person, but I don't show that. Um, and there's sometimes when I'm talking to people where I'm trying to mask, but all of a sudden, I start saying or doing something weird, and it's almost like there's this a voice in the back of my head, "Mayday, Mayday, abort mission! Why are you saying this? You shouldn't be saying this. You shouldn't be saying this," and yet it that second person in the back of my mind doesn't change or affect my behavior, and then people are like, "Oh, she's weird," and they go away. And so a lot of times when I'm dealing in social situations, I like to rehearse things. A lot of the ways I mask are by I like to observe. Like I would rather be in a social situation observing people rather than um, talking. I don't know if I'm making sense. And and so I try to observe things and try to mimic, but my mimicking isn't quite correct. It's like, DNA replicating and there's like one error, and so people notice that and they're like, oh, okay. And so I just don't, even though, like, if I'm comfortable with somebody, I tend to talk more naturally and more freely, like with my family and my friends, but with people I don't know, that naturalness is not there. And, there's some people who see the funny, silly side of me and they think I'm not serious, or there's some people who see me and I just don't talk because I'm afraid of doing something weird and they think I'm mean. Um, the whole RBF thing. And then once they get to know me, like, oh, you're not mean, you're nice. But a lot of times with dating, there's the first impression aspect, like if if someone doesn't immediately like catch your eye, they're not going to spend time talking and getting to know them because you just write them off. And so I feel like I can give off that vibe. I don't really know any other way to be. Um, and so people just think I'm not a nice person. And then they find out, and they get to know me, and they think, oh, you actually are. But most guys don't take the time to see that. And I'm saying all this, and I don't want to get like in like incelly or femcelly territory, because gross. I'm not like I'm not involuntarily celibate in the sense that I think all men are terrible, and but this is all me. I'm not blaming the opposite sex. This is all on me. Um, and there's just lots of trust issues now because of my bad experiences and the way I've behaved, and also the way some of the men I've met have behaved. And so now I just don't want to put myself out there. Um, and it just, I mean, in general, even before all these experiences, it takes me a long time to trust people. But even now, I feel like it's worse. And I know with things with like anxiety, a lot of times the anxiety that I'm experiencing, the way to get over it is just to um, go out and do the thing that you're afraid of. But I don't know, that just terrifies me. And a lot of the things that people do to meet new people, like, going out and doing fun activities, they involve being in large group settings, which I am comfortable with. They involve things that are loud, and I experience my social anxiety where I'm just like, eh. And so I don't feel like me being in those situations is a reflection of my true self. I feel like I'm better able to communicate by writing. And I know there's been guys I've liked in the past where I'm always just constantly like writing them emails or writing them texts, and but not doing a lot of in person, face to face talking because I just is not something that I feel comfortable with, and that I don't feel like it's the best representation of me. And I don't know. I'm very opinionated. I'm very kind of blunt and honest once you get to know me. But I'm never mean, I don't think. Like, I think my intentions are good, but I think sometimes people think that I am just because I just say what I think. The people who do know me best know that's not the case, and they just kind of take everything I say with a grain of salt and just be like, oh, that's just Becca. But how do I get to that place with someone who I'm romantically interested in? There's been only like 3 people in my life that I can think of off the top of my head who I think liked me, but I'm not sure. That's the thing. Social cues. I don't know. It's and so I can only think of those 3 times where I thought, oh, maybe somebody's interested in me. Most of the time, though, I think someone's interested in me, but they're not, or I mistake someone being nice for them flirting with me, and so I end up trying to pursue them. And that's me. In the past, I've been very aggressive. And like, if I like someone, I just, ask them out, and they're just like, ugh. And I know there's probably some guys who like that, but most of the guys that I've interacted with don't, and they're just like, okay, okay, whatever. But the fact that I can't read those social cues when I'm in those situations, and even like platonic relationships are their own thing, but romantic thing, I feel like there's this whole other layer of subtext that I just am not getting. And even if you read all the books in the world, you do all the right things, you try to be your best self, you just can't make someone like you. And that was a lesson I had to learn when in my early 20s, when I was chasing after boys, because I thought, oh, if I just keep on pursuing them, keep on pursuing them, keep on dogging them, they'll like me. And then, yeah, that didn't work out. So I now know better. But, all my dating experiences have taught me things that I don't want or things that I shouldn't do, but not necessarily things that I should do. Um, I don't know. It's really frustrating because I know there's some people who on the spectrum that are asexual or demi-romantic or all those other designations, and they don't have a desire for a romantic or a sexual relationship, but I do. That's something that I want, but I just don't know how to get it, and I just don't know how to navigate the minefield that is dating. You may know all the rules and you may execute all those rules to perfection, and you still aren't going to get what you want. And so I know I don't want to give up and be like, fatalist or like, oh, it's never going to happen, because it could, but I don't know what to do on my end besides jumping in there. But jumping in there terrifies me because I don't know what to do once I jump in, because I've just dealt with so many other failures and so many other. I just don't know what to do. I almost feel like I need to have like someone with me, like as a love coach. Be like, okay, this is what you do. This is what you don't do. Just move on from this. This is fine. This is what they mean when they say this. And maybe I just need to find somebody who is just as honest and open as I am, and isn't afraid to communicate. Because that's the thing. When I want to communicate, I will communicate, um, like I said, I'm very opinionated, and like if I'm comfortable with you and you want to know something, I'll tell you. I'm kind of an open book, and in certain situations, I've learned to be a little bit more closed off, but my natural instinct is to be very open. Um, and I know some of my friends and family appreciate that. Like, I've always been very open about my mental health, My depression, anxiety, PTSD. I've always been open about my autism diagnosis. I've always been pretty open about my health problems. And I've had some of my friends and family saying, like, well, don't mention those things when you're dating. And I try not to. But I also at the same time feel like it's disingenuous for me not to bring those things up. I mean, I know I shouldn't just bring them up right away, but at the same time, with my autism diagnosis, I'm like, I want to be able to like explain myself and be like, this is why I'm acting this way. This is that. Just don't think I'm weird. But maybe I'll meet a person where I don't have to explain those things. I don't know. That's kind of the problem in the world that we live in. It's geared towards people who aren't neurodivergent. And we're trying, like the square peg in the round hole, trying to fit in. And I just need to meet a person who I don't have to explain myself. And they just like, oh, that's just me, and they like me for him. But I don't. That seems like a unicorn thing to me. I've had people tell me that, oh yeah, I know plenty of autistic people who, or people on the spectrum. They find people, whether they find people who are like, also neurodivergent, or they find people who aren't. They're like, there's some people who like autistic people, and want to date them. And I'm just like, I, where are these people? I don't know. Um, anyway, this video is getting really, really long. I don't know if I've really explained myself. If you have any questions or want me to, I feel like if people respond to this video and have questions, I'll be able to be more eloquent in the comment section and write down how I'm actually feeling. Because that's the thing. What I'm saying right now, I just still feel like I'm explaining myself well. I still don't feel like I've really gotten my message across. And I feel like all the words in the world that I speak are not going to be quite as specific as what I say when I write things down and have time to think things through and write down a logical argument, blah, blah, blah. So, anyway, if you do have questions, or just be like, hey, what did you exactly mean when you were talking about this? Go ahead. I don't know. It also depends on people actually watch this video, but we'll see. Anyway, if you guys know of anybody who knows weird people who would mesh with my particular brand of weirdness, just let me know. Okay, thanks, bye. Did that work? No.